Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace. When it comes to wireless controllers for the Switch, the list has been growing more and more, but something the Switch has still been missing is a true Pro controller, despite the fact that Nintendo's own design is called the Pro controller. It makes a certain amount of sense because it is the more traditional controller style that people like for more serious gaming, but when it comes to things like extra functionality, there's not much there. But we finally have a controller that looks to be entering that market for the Switch, and that's the 8BitDo SN30 Pro Plus. This is the latest evolution of 8BitDo's SN30 line of controllers, and I find it kind of funny how with every new model they come out with, it gets a little further and further away from what the original concept was. The basic SN30 is pretty much just a wireless SNES controller with the same kind of button outline, whereas the SN30 Pro added sticks and additional buttons to make it more compatible with modern games. And now with the SN30 Pro Plus, while they still have the same kind of basic outline of an SNES controller, there's a major noticeable physical change in that they have added actual handle grips to it, making it something closer to a PS4 controller rather than an old school SNES one. However, while the overall physical shape and look of the controller has certainly gotten away from that, the core concept of this still I think holds very true to what 8BitDo has promised with a lot of the designs, and that's a controller that is not only a really solid wireless option that works across a number of different devices, but one that holds very true to the things that made a lot of classic controllers very popular, in particular having a really awesome D-pad. So what exactly is different about this compared to the Pro? Well, the first obvious thing is the addition of handle grips, which again makes it something a little more closer to a modern style controller, which I do find to be a lot more comfortable. Yes, the old school SNES design is very nostalgic and still works really well for a smaller controller, but at the end of the day, if you're an adult, it just isn't the most comfortable design out there, so this is something that's going to be a lot better for a long-term gameplay session. One of the more surprising changes is the addition of an actual battery door. So traditionally, the SN30 controllers have all been just ones that you would charge with an internal battery, which this still comes with its own internal battery inside the battery cage, but if you want, you can pop it open, take that out, and just use regular AA's, which I really appreciate having that option. Before moving on, I want to take a second to thank Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Now, you guys are used to seeing me here on YouTube, but we actually also have a website where you can see all the other stuff I've been working on, and that was made super easy thanks to Squarespace. With them, we were able to get the very straightforward but very appropriately named website kevinkenson.com, and thanks to their pre-designed templates, we were able to make it look awesome. The templates made it not only easy to do, but are also designed to look great on both mobile and desktop, so I don't have to worry about what platform you guys are visiting it on. Whether you're looking to advertise your own brand or even selling product, they've got all the tools to help you make it a reality. Make sure to check out squarespace.com to start a 7-day free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/KevinKenson to get 10% off your first website or domain. The Pro Plus has also slightly augmented some of the buttons on the controller, the most notable being the R2 and L2 buttons. On the SN30 Pro, they were basically just straight up buttons that were behind the front shoulder buttons. Now they actually act like more traditional triggers and are very similar to what the DualShock 4 has. Again, kind of adding to that closer comparison to a modern style design. This change also comes with a larger gap between the front and back shoulder buttons. On the SN30s, they were very close together, so it was very easy to roll from one to the other. This time, since they're more fully developed triggers, there's a little more distance involved, but that works out for the better because it's easier to not accidentally hit another button. One other thing worth noting that isn't a change from the SN30, but is a slight difference between the different models of the same controller, is that if you get the SNES or all black design, the D-pad features a very traditional SNES controller, where it's just got the little arrows kind of engraved into it. Whereas if you get the Game Boy design, the D-pad has these little grooves on it that I find add just a little extra grip that I really like. So all these changes so far are pretty cool and I think make it a good upgraded option over the SN30 Pro, but the real thing that makes this a true Pro controller option for the Switch is the addition of software customization. With its release, the SN30 Pro Plus is the first 8BitDo controller to offer the use of customization software. Their past controllers have all had different cool little things you can do, but never something that was fully customizable like this. So you're able to get a program for your PC, all you have to do is launch it, plug in the controller. This is not the right cable. Oops. We'll be right back, folks. So what kind of stuff exactly can you do? Well, first off, you are able to manage multiple profiles, so you can program it for specific games in mind. Maybe you want one button set up for when you're playing Super Smash Bros. And a different one if you're playing Mario Kart. And there's a couple different things you can customize. First off, button mapping. So you can change, for instance, putting the A button to L2, or changing the B button to pressing in one of the sticks. This is a feature that's pretty standard on a lot of Pro controllers now, and it's awesome to have it on the SN30 Pro Plus. I think it would have been really nice if the controller featured maybe an additional button or two aside from the traditional layout that a Switch makes use of, because then you have buttons that you can really dedicate towards being remappable to specific tasks. Whereas instead, now if you change one thing, you have to make sure you switch something else, that way you don't actually lose functionality. Though of course, depending on the game, they're not necessarily using every single button. And an extra level to this that is not common to a lot of other Pro controllers is that the 30 Pro Plus also includes the option to create different macros. You can do things where by hitting a single button, it acts like hitting multiple buttons at the same time, along with even some stick movements. Now the reason why this isn't super common in other Pro controllers is that it's a little frowned upon in competitive scenes. So if you're going to use something in actual competition, they oftentimes don't really support having things like macros. But for personal use, it's all fair game. Now along with the button options, there's also a couple different sensitivity things you can adjust on the controller. For instance, you can go over to the sticks and change how both the left and right ones are read, as well as doing things like inverting the X and Y axis, which is an option that some games have built in, but for those that don't, this gives you the way to make sure that you have the exact control style you prefer, as well as making the sticks more or less sensitive depending on certain ranges. An additional sensitivity option is for triggers. Now, something a lot of Pro controllers tend to offer is the idea of trigger stops, where there's an actual physical change to how the trigger works to make it activate sooner. That's not present on this. Instead, you can change how the controller actually reads pressing down the trigger. So if you like, you can make it so that the difference between going from not hitting at all to just a little bit reads as a full trigger pull, or even change it to where hitting a little bit doesn't read at all, but instead it reads it once you're all the way down. So if you want to make them more or less sensitive and where it actually starts and stops, that's all adjustable in the software as well. One extra little feature too is that for both the sticks and the triggers, along with these sensitivity adjustments, you can also swap them. So if for whatever reason a game doesn't give you the ability to change mapping and you'd rather the left read like the right for the sticks or the triggers, that's an option here. And of course, no Pro controller customization software would be complete without the option to adjust the rumble sensitivity on the controller as well, with the option to adjust both the left and right motors. A really handy part of this is that it immediately gives you feedback as you adjust it, so if you set it down really low, you get a sense of how heavy that is versus having it at max. All of these options combined are basically a first for any controller aimed at the Switch. Now to be fair, the 8BitDo controller is designed to be something that works across a couple different options, but it's become very clear ever since the Switch was released that this has become a major market for them. So then the next question is, how does it compare to other wireless options for your Switch? Before comparing it to some of the more official options, I do want to cover real quick how it handles compared to the SN30 Pro, in that it's basically a full-blown upgrade. As far as I'm concerned right now, if you're debating between getting one of the older models or the new Pro Plus, the Pro Plus is just the way to go. Not only do the handle grips make it a lot more comfortable, but all the new customization options and the choice of how you want to handle your battery supply is just a big upgrade. The only thing about it that's a little bit of a downgrade, and this is more of a personal gripe, and this is something I've been doing with some of their more recent controllers, is it doesn't have shortcuts on the back. Their older controllers would all list on the back, hey, if you need to sync this to Windows, do this button combination. You gotta do Android or Switch, do this button combination. Whereas this one is just blank entirely. It could just be the one that was sent to me early, doesn't have those features, but it looks like that is part of the final production line, which is just sad. To be honest, if this wasn't something on their previous controllers, I wouldn't even think to complain about it, but because it was there, I just can't help but wonder why it's gone. Now, as for how it compares to more official controllers, let's start with the actual Nintendo official Pro controller. Now, one important thing to compare about these right away, I think, is the difference in button layout, because the official Nintendo Switch Pro controllers are very close to the style that's become very popular thanks to Xbox One, whereas the 8BitDo style controllers have much more in common with a PlayStation style setup. So anyone who's a big fan of that controller grip style, especially if you like the idea of symmetrical sticks instead of having them offset like this is a good choice for that. If instead you really like that more Xbox style grip, the official Nintendo one is going to be a lot more familiar for you. That aside, when it comes to functionalities, of course one of the big benefits of the Pro Plus is the ability to do all those different customization options, which you are not getting with the official Nintendo one, but the Nintendo controller does have a few specific functions for the Switch, like being able to be used for reading amiibos and having HD rumble. You do still get vibration with the Pro Plus, but it's not the same kind of HD rumble with the Pro controller that's going to have little lows and highs depending on the games that gives you that kind of more realistic feedback. One other thing that the Pro Plus has over pretty much all the controllers we're talking about in this section is that it has by far the best D-pad out of the group, aside from, of course, the other SN30 Pro. It's not that the D-pads, unlike the official Pro controller, are bad, it's just that the SN30 Pro Plus is that much better. For something a little bit different, there is of course also the PowerA wireless controller. Now, a lot of the arguments for why the Pro Plus is better than the official Switch Pro controller still hold true here, but one of the big things I think worth noting is the PowerA controller's option of having 2 reprogrammable buttons on the back. Now again, the SN30 Pro Plus gives you the ability to customize the entire button layout, which is cool, but it doesn't really have any extra buttons that free up the ability to just have some extra handy shortcuts, whereas the PowerA controller, you can't really change any of these ones unless it's an in-game option, but you've got these 2 on the back, which is really handy for certain situations. A popular example for this would be something like an FPS game, where you want the option of keeping your thumbs on the sticks at all times, but would also like to simultaneously be able to do things like fire and jump using one of the back buttons, which is not something you can do here. Of course, this is not the only wireless design that PowerA makes. They also have their GameCube controller, which admittedly is something of a much more specialized purpose. I still think the GameCube controller is one of the most comfortable designs for Smash Brothers specifically, games that are built around it, but as far as something that's going to be a little more catch-all, the SN30 Pro Plus is still a big advantage. Honestly, I gotta say that when it gets right down to it, especially for its cost, the SN30 Pro Plus is the best controller option out there for the Switch right now. There are still very big arguments you can make for the official Pro controller or even the GameCube design from PowerA if it's a matter of what you prefer in terms of button layout and grip style. But in terms of just raw functionality and quality of buttons, this is just awesome.